What's been the U.S.'s reaction to Russia's actions?
Well, so far we've seen at the highest levels with, over the weekend, President Obama having that 90-minute phone call with President Putin, although that seems not to have actually turned the tide on anything. Today, Vice President Biden spoke with the Russian Prime Minister, Dmitry Medvedev, and also threatened of increasing diplomatic, economic isolation of Russia if they go forward with these incursions in Crimea or do anything that is seen as an invasion of the other parts of Ukraine. We saw John Kerry using big words, and the State Department spokesperson today who came out and said that the U.S. would hold Russia responsible for anything that goes wrong in Crimea. The problem is really, what can the U.S. do about it?
Indira, what's the likely U.S. response going to be? Is military action likely?
I think it's very unlikely. You have not even heard even when President Obama said that Russia would suffer the consequences for these actions, he never raised the threat of military force. And even though Secretary Kerry has said that all options are on the table, he admitted openly yesterday that nobody wants military action. Even John McCain, who's usually a proponent of strong U.S. military action to get involved in foreign conflicts and try to head them off, even he said he thought military action was not a likely thing. I think what we're going to see is more diplomatic, economic isolation. Obama has already said the U.S. is suspending preparation for getting involved in the G8 summit meeting in Sochi, Russia. I think another thing would be following through on the boycott of that G8 meeting, or even going further and expelling Russia from the G8. That would be a very big move, as would visa bans, asset bans, various targeted economic sanctions.
Indira, what are the economic implications of the unrest for the rest of the world?
Well, we're seeing this already with European stocks plunging the most in more than a month. They were retreating today after reaching a 6-year high last week, and that's because of this escalating tension in the Ukraine and the fears about it hurting corporate earnings. So we see companies that have exposure to Russia who are leading the losses. And, you know, a very significant thing is that the military intervention in the Ukraine threatens to derail energy exploration in a region that holds 1/4 of the world's natural gas reserves. And don't forget, we've talked about this before, the key pipelines that go from Russia into Europe through Ukraine. And we've even seen today energy analysts saying that it could even affect gas prices as far away as Great Britain.
And not to mention supply routes as well for U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Indira, how likely is it then that Vladimir Putin now feels he has the upper hand, that he feels that the international community is impotent?
Look, I think that there's very little militarily that the international community can do. When the Kremlin has sent troops across the border in the past, the U.S. and its allies have cried foul before. We saw this in Afghanistan in 1979. We saw it in Georgia in 2008. But actual military action didn't happen. So, you know, it's unclear at this point whether he'll go further than essentially seizing Crimea. That is unclear. But I think that, you know, there's very little beyond diplomatic and economic isolation that the rest of the world can do at this point. So it remains to be seen how the ripple effects are going to affect the economy and also diplomatic ties with Russia, which we need for other reasons, like Iran and Syria.